Sometimes the words meant to strengthen a sick person leave them feeling blamed, unheard, and alone. They may be surrounded by prayer, declarations, and confident voices, yet inwardly they are asking, "Is anyone listening to me? Am I permitted to say that I hurt?" Here is a neglected truth. There are two ways fear can govern a home. In one home, fear speaks openly. Every symptom becomes a prophecy of disaster. Every conversation returns to the diagnosis. Family members rehearse what may go wrong until the illness seems to occupy every room. In another home, fear wears religious clothing. No one is permitted to mention pain. Tears are corrected. Questions are treated as unbelief. The sick person must sound strong so everyone else can feel strong. Notice carefully, these are not true opposites. One fears the sickness, the other fears an honest conversation about the sickness. One tries to control tomorrow by predicting disaster. The other tries to control tomorrow by controlling the sufferer's words. Both are governed by fear. Faith works differently. Faith does not deny the battle, and faith does not enthrone the battle. Faith can hear, "I am hurting today," without answering. Then you must not believe. Faith can receive a difficult report without declaring that the report is sovereign. Faith tells the truth, rests in God, and remains beside the person who is suffering. You see, words may be religiously correct, while the spirit behind them communicates impatience, suspicion, or conditional love. A prayer can sound bold and still make a wounded person feel accused. A declaration can mention healing while silently demanding, "Protect my confidence. Do not let me see your fear." That is not carrying another's burden. It is placing another burden upon them. The sick person must not be required to manage your emotions, defend your doctrine, or produce the appearance of certainty. Your speech should strengthen them, not examine them. Your hope should give them room to breathe, not force them to perform. Let us establish the standard that will govern everything that follows. Ask it before every prayer, every declaration, every question, and every act of care. Does this communicate hope and loving presence, or does it communicate pressure and abandonment? Fear seeks control. Faith working through love seeks the good of the person. Fear demands an outcome. Love remains faithful. Fear makes the sufferer carry the room. Faith says, "You will not carry this alone." Now that we have exposed fear beneath both anxious despair and coercive certainty, we can see how it trains an entire household to keep talking about the mountain. The mountain begins to govern a household long before anyone deliberately gives it authority. It happens through repetition. Someone checks the symptoms again. Another person searches for every possible complication. A relative calls with a frightening story. The medical report is repeated at breakfast, discussed in the hallway, carried into the evening, and whispered about after the sick person has gone to bed. Soon the family is no longer communicating about the illness. It is living in continual fellowship with it. You see, whatever occupies the inward attention will eventually train the mouth. Words reveal what the heart has been revolving around, and repeated words carry the heart back to the same place. Fear speaks, the family answers, and fear speaks again. The diagnosis becomes not merely a fact to be managed, but the voice that governs the atmosphere. Now, we must make a careful distinction. Responsible reporting is not unbelief. A new symptom should be communicated. Medical instructions should be understood. A need for help should be stated plainly. These words serve wisdom and care. Fearful rehearsal serves no such purpose. It repeats what is already known, adds what has not happened, and then treats the darkest possibility as though it were tomorrow's certainty. Reporting says, "This has changed. What should we do?" Fear says, "This will only grow worse. We will never endure it." Jesus taught his disciples to speak to the mountain. But notice the order. Before directing their attention toward the obstacle, he directed their confidence toward God. Faith does not begin by staring at the mountain until courage appears. Faith begins with God, his character, his presence, his authority, his faithfulness. The mountain may be real. It is not supreme. Fear says, "Our family will fall apart under this." Faith says, "Grace will meet us in this day." Fear says, "No one understands, and we are alone." Faith says, "We will seek wisdom, receive help, and remain beside one another." Fear attempts to live through 10 imagined tomorrows. Faith receives strength for the duty that is here now. And faith need not shout. Some of the strongest words are spoken by a trembling voice. I am frightened, but I will not leave you. Quiet confidence is not weak confidence. A gentle assurance rooted in love may carry more authority than a loud declaration spoken to silence panic. Here, then, is the first household discipline. Report what must be known. Refuse to rehearse speculative doom. Return every necessary conversation to God's faithfulness and the next loving action. What do we know? What help is needed? What can love do today? That practice changes the atmosphere. Yet correcting negative forecasts is not enough. A family can stop speaking fear and still misuse faith by refusing to hear the sufferer's truth. Faith never requires you to pretend that the mountain is not there. Jesus did not tell his disciples to imagine an empty landscape. He acknowledged the obstacle and then taught them how faith responds to it. That distinction is deeply important. Here are 3 facts we must keep in their proper order. Pain is an experience, and it should be heard. A diagnosis is information, and it should be taken seriously. But neither pain nor diagnosis is the person's identity, and neither has the right to become the ruler of the family's hope. Faith does not abolish facts by refusing to name them. Faith places facts beneath a higher authority. Yet listen to what sometimes happens. A sick person begins to say, "The pain was worse last night," and someone interrupts, "Do not confess that." Tears appear, and someone treats those tears as evidence of spiritual failure. The sufferer admits fear, and another believer demands an immediate declaration of certainty. What does the sick person learn? Not faith. They learn concealment. They learn to hide symptoms, suppress questions, and perform strength. They begin protecting the family from their honest experience at the very moment when truthful communication is most necessary. That is not spiritual freedom. It is isolation wearing religious clothing. Notice the distinction between the sufferer's testimony and the caregiver's confession. The sufferer has the right to tell you what is happening in their body and emotions. You have the responsibility to govern your response with wisdom, faith, and love. Their honesty is not yours to censor. Your faith is yours to practice. You see, honesty says, "This is a difficult day." Defeat says, "Nothing good can meet us here." Honesty says, "I am frightened." Defeat says, "Fear will rule everything that follows." Faith can receive the first sentence without adding the second. Some of the strongest faith stands beside an unresolved fact. It does not falsify the report. It refuses to enthrone the report. It does not rebuke the tears. It brings companionship into them. It does not demand that pain disappear from the conversation. It refuses to let pain become the person's name or the family's final word. So learn a better pattern. When your loved one speaks, first acknowledge what you heard. That sounds exhausting. Then affirm its importance. I am glad you told me. Give the assurance of presence. You are not facing this alone. Only then ask, would you like me to pray with you? That is faith governed by love. It hears the fact, honors the person, and introduces hope without erasing either. But if another person's pain must be honored, then their will must also be honored. This brings us to the boundary that spiritual zeal too often crosses: consent. Authority under Christ never gives one believer ownership of another person's voice, body, treatment decisions, or emotional process. Spiritual authority is submitted authority. It serves under love. It does not rule another person through pressure. There are 2 kinds of participation in prayer. One is coercion. The other is agreement. Coercion announces what will happen, decides what must be said, and demands that the sick person participate. Agreement asks what support is welcome. It joins the person without overruling them. Coercion says, "We are praying now, and you must agree." Love asks, "Would prayer help you right now?" Notice the difference. Asking does not reduce faith. It removes control. Sickness can leave a person unusually vulnerable. Pain consumes attention. Fatigue shortens conversation. Fear may come in waves. Appointments, decisions, examinations, and treatments can make every day feel as though another demand is waiting. In such a condition, even a well-meant prayer may become one more thing the person is expected to endure. So love asks, would you like to talk, or would you rather rest? Would you like me to pray now? May I place my hand on your shoulder? Would a prayer for healing strengthen you, or do you need prayer for peace and endurance today? Would you like words, or would quiet company serve you better? These are not the questions of timid faith. They are the questions of mature love. Love does not assume that its intention guarantees the effect. Love considers the person before it acts. But what if your loved one says no? Then receive the answer without offense. Do not withdraw affection. Do not accuse them of unbelief. Do not make your wounded pride another burden they must carry. You may pray privately. You may continue preparing meals, arranging help, sitting nearby, or simply honoring their need for rest. A refusal at one moment is not necessarily a rejection of God, of you, or of prayer. It may mean, I am exhausted. It may mean, I cannot receive more words. It may mean, please let me have one choice that still belongs to me. Consent does not weaken conviction. It disciplines conviction through humility. The name of Jesus is not an instrument of manipulation. Faith is not a formula by which we force God, circumstances, or another human being into our preferred arrangement. True faith stands under Christ, and everything under Christ must learn the government of love. Ask yourself, therefore, are my words serving this person, or am I using this crisis to quiet my own anxiety and prove my certainty? When that question governs you, permission becomes strength, dignity is protected, and real agreement becomes possible. Once pressure is removed, listening no longer appears passive. It is revealed as one of the strongest forms of faith-filled presence. Listening is not surrendering the room to sickness. Listening is refusing to abandon the person who is living inside the sickness. There are two failures that often appear when pain begins to speak. One listener absorbs every fear, adds new fears to it, and helps despair multiply. The other listener becomes so anxious to defend faith that they interrupt, correct, preach, or solve before they have understood what was said. One magnifies the trouble, the other dismisses the person. Love does neither. Notice how simple disciplined listening can be. First, become quiet. Then, invite the person to speak. Reflect what you heard before you interpret it. Ask, what feels hardest today? And while they answer, resist preparing your spiritual response. Give them the rare gift of being heard without having to compete with your next sentence. Perhaps they say, I am exhausted by all these appointments. You may answer, this has asked so much of you. Perhaps they say, I am afraid of what the doctor will tell me. You may answer, that uncertainty sounds frightening. Is that agreement with hopelessness? No. Empathy recognizes the weight of the burden. Unbelief declares that the burden is sovereign. You can acknowledge that a road is hard without declaring that there is no grace for the journey. Grief may speak, anger may speak, confusion may speak, spiritual weariness may speak. These emotions are experiences, not identities. They are visitors, not masters. But if they are not permitted into truthful fellowship, they do not disappear. They go into hiding. How, then, can you listen without being captured by fear? Live in continual fellowship with the Father. While your loved one speaks, your inward heart can remain turned toward God. Father, give me wisdom. Make me gentle. Keep fear from ruling this moment. You do not need to withdraw your attention from the person to remain conscious of God. His presence steadies you so that you can hear pain without fainting beneath it. And perhaps you recognize that you have not listened well. You corrected tears. You interrupted reports of pain. You made your loved one feel spiritually examined. Then do not defend your intention. Repair the wound. Say, I wanted to help, but I did not truly hear you. I made you feel that your honesty was unsafe. I am sorry. Will you tell me how I can support you better? That apology is not defeat. It is obedience to love. It restores the fellowship that spiritual pride disturbed. You see, listening earns the right to speak. Hope becomes believable when it comes from someone who stayed through the silence, heard the fear without condemning it, and understood something of the burden before offering an answer. Having heard the person rather than merely hearing the illness, you can now pray and speak hope in a manner that strengthens instead of controls. True confession is agreement with God's character and promises. It is not confidence in a human formula. It does not become stronger through greater volume, more repetition, or emotional force. Its strength comes from the one with whom it agrees. Once permission has been given, prayer can follow a simple relational order. Acknowledge the present need without enlarging it. Thank the Father for his nearness and compassion. Ask boldly for healing, wisdom, endurance, and the right care. Then entrust the person and the process to him. Prayer turns the heart toward the Father. Confession refuses to let fear write the final sentence. These belong together, but neither gives you authority to dictate another person's experience. Notice what must be left outside the room. Do not say, "If your faith were stronger, this would already be over." Do not blame continuing symptoms on a frightened sentence spoken in exhaustion. Do not promise a timetable God has not given you. Do not require the sufferer to repeat words until you are satisfied with their performance. Those phrases do not carry the weak, they crush them. Faith-filled words have another purpose. They speak belonging. You are loved, and sickness has not changed your place among us. They speak companionship. I will be with you through today. They resist fear. We will not let this report govern every thought in this house. They protect identity. You are a whole person, not a diagnosis. They express confidence without presumption. God is near, his compassion has not failed, and we will continue to seek his help. Suppose your loved one says, "I am afraid." Do not answer the fear before you honor the person. Say, "Thank you for telling me." Then ask, "What would help right now? Comfort, practical help, quiet, or prayer?" If prayer is welcomed, let it be clear and gentle. Father, you see this fear. Surround your child with peace. Give wisdom for the next step. Strengthen this body, and let your healing mercy be known. Strong faith may sound like a whisper beside a bed. It may be a sentence spoken in a waiting room. It may come through tears. Heaven is not impressed by spiritual theater. Faith is measured by its agreement with God and its fruit in love. Here is the distinction between boldness and presumption. Boldness asks under God's authority and continues to trust him. Presumption claims authority over God, over the body, over the treatment course, or over the sufferers standing before him. Boldness is reverent. Presumption is controlling. Boldness strengthens. Presumption burdens. So, carry this standard with you. Pray boldly, speak gently, promise presence, and leave blame outside the room. Let every declaration pass through the government of love. But words become complete only when they take bodily form. The faith spoken beside a sickbed must also appear in medicine schedules, meals, transportation, rest, and practical service. Confession without obedient love becomes noise. Words that bless must become hands that serve. If faith is real in the heart and true upon the lips, it must also enter the walk. There is no necessary conflict between trusting God and receiving wise medical care. Treatment does not have to become Lord in order to become useful. A diagnosis may be taken seriously without being permitted to define the person. Prayer can continue through examinations, consultations, medication, procedures, and recovery. Faith and wisdom are not enemies. Notice how practical love becomes. It helps organize appointments. It records questions when the patient is too weary to remember them. It prepares meals, arranges transportation, protects needed rest, and shares responsibilities that have grown too heavy for one person. When invited, it helps maintain treatment routines. When another caregiver is exhausted, it steps in. This is not lesser work than prayer. It is prayer taking form in service. Yet even service must remain under the government of consent. Do not seize control merely because you are eager to help. Ask, what would make today easier? Ask, which tasks would you like me to handle, and which do you want to keep? Sickness has already taken much from a person. Love should preserve their agency and ordinary life wherever possible. Accurate symptom reporting is also part of faithful care. It is not a negative confession to say that pain has changed, a reaction has appeared, or a condition has worsened. That information may be necessary for responsible decisions. Never encourage someone to conceal symptoms or interfere with treatment merely to maintain an appearance of confidence. Faith has no need of dishonesty. Now let us notice the caregiver. Steadiness does not mean one person must carry everything. Weariness can cloud judgment. Anxiety can make every decision feel urgent. Mature love asks others for help, receives rest, and refuses to make one frightened family member the sole interpreter of every medical or spiritual question. The believer does not serve in order to purchase a particular outcome from God. Service is not a bargain. We serve because the life of love governs us. We carry the bag. We wash the dish. We sit through the appointment. We make the call. We keep the promise. Love turns confession into conduct. So, after every hopeful declaration, ask one searching question. What act of care should accompany these words today? Perhaps the answer is prayer. Perhaps it is a meal, a ride, a quiet room, a written list, or an hour of relief for another caregiver. Whatever form it takes, practical support does not dilute faith. It gives faith relational substance and protects the suffering person from neglect disguised as spirituality. Individual acts of care matter, but repeated words and actions eventually create a household atmosphere. The next task is to govern that shared atmosphere without policing every person within it. One diagnosis can reorganize an entire household. Meals become medical conferences. Every message produces alarm. A closed door raises questions. Even silence feels charged with what no one knows how to say. If this continues, sickness becomes more than a condition one person is facing. It becomes the atmosphere everyone is breathing. A household of faith must therefore make a deliberate agreement. Necessary facts will be shared clearly. Catastrophic possibilities will not be endlessly rehearsed. Pain may be spoken without correction. Prayer will be offered with permission. Practical needs will be named without shame. This agreement does not hide reality. It gives reality proper boundaries. Medical updates do not need to dominate every conversation. Choose a time, a person, or a family channel through which important information can be communicated accurately. Private fears should be taken to trusted supporters, wise counselors, and prayer not continually poured upon the sick person. The one carrying the illness must not also be required to carry everyone else's anxiety. Notice carefully, your first responsibility in confession is not to police another person's vocabulary. It is to govern your own heart and mouth. If the patient says, "I am exhausted," do not examine the sentence for doctrinal weakness. Examine your response for love. Ask what they need. Correct fear in yourself before you attempt to correct speech in them. And do not permit illness to consume the person's whole identity. Speak about ordinary things. Share memories. Laugh when laughter is welcome. Sit quietly, without turning the silence into a prayer meeting. Ask about the book, the garden, the family story, the interest that belonged to them before treatment began. Sickness may affect the body, but it must not be allowed to erase the person. Relatives may disagree about prayer, treatment, language, or the meaning of faith. When that happens, return to the governing duties: truth, love, consent, safety, and faithful presence. Do not turn the bedside into a contest in which each person displays greater certainty. Here is a simple daily rhythm. Share one honest update. Name one reason for gratitude. Make one specific request for help. Offer one prayer if it is welcomed. Choose one practical next step. That rhythm gives truth a place without giving fear the whole house. It gives prayer a place without making prayer a performance. It gives care a form without taking away the loved one's agency. Children and extended family are watching. They are learning whether Christian hope requires panic, dishonesty, or cruelty, or whether it can face suffering with courage, tenderness, and truth. Such a household may still face delays, reversals, and unanswered questions. Therefore, faithfulness must be measured by something deeper than immediate visible results. Then comes the hour when prayers have been offered, hopeful words have been spoken, and the evidence has not changed. Symptoms remain. Treatment becomes difficult. The next report brings more questions than answers. At that moment, faith is tested not only by the illness, but by the temptation to assign blame. A formula must protect itself. If the expected result has not appeared, someone must have failed. Perhaps the sick person doubted. Perhaps they spoke wrongly. Perhaps they accepted treatment when they should have refused it. Perhaps they did not agree strongly enough. Reject that burden. Another person's body is not the instrument by which you prove your faith. Their outcome is not the examination by which your doctrine receives a passing grade. To place that responsibility upon the sufferer is not boldness, it is spiritual harm. What then is steadfast faith? It is continued agreement with God's character, while circumstances remain unresolved. It refuses panic. It refuses accusation. It continues to pray. It receives wisdom. It serves faithfully. It stays near. Notice carefully. Faith must not become harsher as the process becomes longer. Delay does not call for greater pressure. It calls for deeper patience. It calls for more careful listening, renewed practical help, and words spacious enough to receive weariness. There are two ways to measure faithfulness. One measures timing and visible outcomes. Did the change come when we expected it? The other measures the fruit of love. Were we truthful? Were we steady? Were we humble? Did we remain present? The first seeks control. The second reveals Christ-like character. There may also be grief. There may be tears, lament, disappointment, and questions for which no quick answer is honest. These do not have to occur outside fellowship with God. A grieving heart can still turn toward the Father. A disappointed voice can still pray. Tears do not rewrite God's character, and they do not cancel belonging. Faith is not proven by pretending that loss does not hurt. Faith is proven when pain is permitted to speak without being permitted to become Lord. Therefore, stop trying to prove certainty and begin embodying covenant love. Let your loved one know. You will not be blamed if tomorrow is difficult. You will not be hidden because your story makes others uncomfortable. You will not be abandoned if the outcome is not the one for which we prayed. That is faithfulness capable of surviving uncertainty, delay, and grief. The governing truth is now complete. It must be gathered into a daily rule of speech and service that can be practiced before the next difficult conversation begins. Come back to the person with whom we began, surrounded by religious words, yet feeling blamed, unheard, and alone. Now imagine another scene. Their pain is heard without correction. Their consent is honored. Prayer carries hope without making promises God has not given. Care appears in practical form. Presence remains dependable. That is faith working through love. Fear predicts disaster or demands control. Faith listens. Faith tells the truth. Faith asks permission. Faith prays boldly. Faith serves wisely. Faith remains when the room is quiet and the answer is not yet visible. Here, then, is a rule you can carry into every conversation. Hear before you answer. Acknowledge the problem without enthroning it. Ask before you pray aloud. Speak hope without guaranteeing an outcome. Support appropriate care. Govern your own confession before examining another's words. Stay present without blame. Test this rule in your home. Where your words have wounded, apologize. Where fear has trained your speech, bring your inward life back under God's truth. Where you have offered declarations but overlooked meals, transportation, rest, or companionship, let love become practical today. Do not wait for crisis to train you. Fill your heart with the truth of God before pressure comes. Cultivate continual fellowship with the Father. Practice words that bless during ordinary mornings, family meals, small disappointments, and quiet evenings. The mouth prepared in peace will be steadier in the hospital room. And this responsibility reaches beyond one household. Churches and prayer communities must learn to build faith without shaming the weak. Let confident prayer be joined to consent. Let confession be joined to compassion. Let spiritual authority be joined to humility. Let every promise of support become tangible help. Would it not be wonderful if suffering people knew that the community of faith was a safe place to tell the truth? A place where tears were not treated as failure, treatment was not treated as unbelief, and unresolved pain did not make anyone an object of suspicion. Let your loved one hear hope in your words. Let them see love in your actions. Let them feel safety in your presence. Let them know that no outcome will make them responsible for carrying your faith. Speak from faith, walk in love, remain present.